Welcome to the Wise and Happy Life podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern science, and mindfulness, philosophy, and happiness practices blend with neuroscience, compassion, and common sense. Hosted by Bob Martin, meditation mentor, happiness coach, trial lawyer, and entrepreneur. This podcast explores how to live with grace, presence, and purpose in a complex world.
Hello, good people, and welcome to another episode of a Wise and Happy Life podcast. And, the other day I was talking to my wife and I asked her about some things that we were going to do. And she goes, I don't remember you telling me about that. And there's other times when she has just an amazing memory. And so sometimes I think that it's selective. Spending 40 years as a trial lawyer, I got pretty good at remembering what people said, so I could bring it up in cross-examination. And that was kind of, strategic and the like. So memory is an interesting thing, but most of us might remember our first kiss, but what would it be like to remember every kiss that we ever had? So today's guest, we have Frank Healy with us today, who has an autobiographical memory and a perfect memory. He remembers his first kiss and every kiss. And he's also a licensed life coach. He's also a therapist and has worked years and years and years with people, helping them to find their way to a wise and happy life. So I'm really happy and I'm really honored to have Frank in the studio with us today. And he can share with us, the question that's probably on our minds. What is that like to have that kind of a perfect memory? So Frank, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just tell us, what was that like?
Hi, I'm Frank Healy, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I first discovered that I had this incredible memory when I was 5, not quite 6 years old. I was homesick from kindergarten for a week and too sick to even be up playing with toys. So it happened my Uncle Billy down the street had given me a calendar for that year, 1966. And I would look at each block with a date in it and imagine and picture what would be in the block, what would be on primetime TV that night, and then play the coming on tune in my head. So by the end of that week, I realized I had the whole year memorized. That particular year, Thanksgiving was going to be the 24th, and Christmas was going to be on a Sunday, and my birthday, May 21st, was going to be on a Saturday. And from that week on, as each day went by, so we're talking 59 and a half, almost 60 years now, all through my days, I would make notes of what date it is with everything that happened, what day of the week, and what the weather in the area that I'm in. And I would, if there were any big news events that day, as well as things that happened to me. And the news events on days when there was a big one. But, as far as the day of the week, the weather, and personal events is for every single day, I'd remember them. So it used to be a mixed blessing.
Until I imagine. I can imagine, yeah.
Yes,
I mean, we have good memories, we have bad memories, and I guess you remember them all, huh?
Yes, I remember the good and the bad, and that's why it was a mixed blessing. I'd remember good times with friends and family. And every kiss and every date I ever went on, and I went through a lot of women before I found my wife, and so it was. So the good and bad days, but it got to be where I got interested in psychology and self-help.
Before we go there, and I certainly do not mean this as a test, but just to kind of drive it home to us, could you give us some examples, of some memories from some days that are some years ago?
Okay, well, I remember. Okay, well, let's take a couple of same days of the year. Thursday, December 30th, 1971. I was 11 years old. We were on break from school for the holidays. Remember that day my mom took us to the local theater to see Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder. And so that was a good one. Now, 11 years later, also a Thursday, December 30th, 1982, they let me go my first job that I had after college in an adolescent unit in a psych hospital. After they had told me 3 weeks earlier they were going to keep me, so there was, and along with that goes the idea that I remember the emotions from each day too.
Oh, so when you bring up a memory, it all comes up, the feelings, the emotions, the interactions.
Yes, that's it. It all comes up. So, I think of, I remember the morning of the 71 day hearing on the radio, the Sammy Davis Jr. singing the Candyman. I'm thinking, we're going to see that this afternoon. And then on the 82, I was up very early that day because I wanted to see the lunar eclipse that was going on, and thinking, this is really neat. And, I'm getting my evaluation today, and they told me it was going to be good, and then they pulled that stunt. So it was, so I got interested in learning about psychology because I wanted to get rid of the feelings from the bad memories. Like, I knew that I was never going to let go of the actual memories. So I thought, if I could only keep the feelings from the good memories, and when a bad memory pops up, to just have it be, so what? Let's move on to the next thought, like no emotion behind it. So
were you able to do that? Were you able to do that? Was that possible?
Yes, between cognitive therapy, where you change your thoughts about something, along with some of the psychological and even self-help techniques, such as EFT tapping, and I was able to, or even changing my thought right away to something better. I teach this stuff to my clients that I counsel, because even though not many people, they've discovered a little over 100 people in the whole human race that have a memory like mine. And they've even told me that I seem to have it in a greater amount than most of the ones they even studied. So, but, my clients, they'll have memories of, childhood or even adult abuse and different things that I teach them how to at least let go of the feelings and any self-esteem issues or ideas about the world that came up that from those memories that aren't very good.
Yeah. So that brings me to a question that's on my mind in light of your memory, because one of the things that in teaching meditation, we work with people's thoughts, and so what you're saying about the idea of having some skill around the power that you give to your thinking and the ability to have some say in the matter of what you think is really, really part of what meditation teaches. But classical psychology, says that you have to face the fear to heal it, that you have to bring these things up, that your whole relationship with your therapist is all about finding a safe place where you can allow the expression of some of these early pains. But you have a very unique perspective on that, and you also are a therapist. So how true or accurate or workable are those classical psychotherapeutic theories?
Well, I think I use that expression or slogan, everything is relative. Like, I've counseled some clients who are so sensitive that even thinking about a past memory just makes them batty and too out of control to even to even face it. So for those types of clients, I'll just do some some positive meditations and some breathing exercises. Now maybe at a later time, some of them might be ready to face it. But so I think for some people, facing it is good, but then not spending a lot of time facing it. Just acknowledging it's there, like the memory is there, and acknowledging the feelings they have about it. But then stop with that there and go right to healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So trying to find some balance by adding some positivity to the mix.
Yes, that's right. And there is an NLP technique that I do, neuro-linguistic programming, that I've done a variation of with clients, and even mentioned in my book, Heal Your Memories, Change Your Life, where you get in a meditative state, then you go back and forth between visualizing and using all your senses to recall the bad memory, then spend a longer period, maybe 4 minutes versus 2 minutes. Remember, reliving a good memory, and you go back and forth with that a few times, and because there's one advantage we have in our mind: good feelings can eclipse and overpower bad feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So when they do that with the client a few times, it kind of the good floods out the good feelings from the good memory flood out the bad feelings from the bad memory. And again, it's like the bad memory. Okay, it happened, but don't really feel things about it anymore.
Mm-hmm. And they say, what you resist persists. And so I guess what I think I'm hearing is you're saying when the bad memory comes up, if you try to resist it or suppress it, you really can't do that. And you'll almost kind of empower it. Whereas if you just simply shift over and think of something that's positive, it's not like you're suppressing it. You're just shifting away from it. Am I hearing you right?
Well, yes, because you always, that's not denial, that's just shifting, because, you have to face up to it. And even if you're just going about your day and maybe a couple things happen that didn't go the way you wanted to, the first thing is always to acknowledge the feeling you're feeling. Don't just, I think some self-help things, I think, are a little too Pollyanna. It's like, you can't deny, the feeling's there, and you have to at least acknowledge it's there. And it's ironic that sometimes just when you acknowledge that you're feeling a certain way, just acknowledging it seems to take the edge off of it.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I tell people who have panic attacks that first thing is to acknowledge you're having a panic attack. And right, because then you won't fight it, because fighting it will just make you more anxious because you're putting more pressure on yourself.
Right.
But
right.
acknowledging that it's there, and maybe even make a little joke to yourself about it. Like say, maybe think or say, or if you're alone, say out loud, okay, nobody can expect anything from me for the next half hour because I'm gonna be a slug taking care of this panic attack for that time. Catch me in an hour or two.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the idea of going public with something like that, is a little scary to folks. But the truth of the matter is that, my experience has been that you feel more vulnerable when you put up a shield to protect your vulnerability. But when you drop that shield and you just say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I am, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, toot toot, and you can just be open and honest with folks, it's almost as if you become invulnerable and the pain that you expected isn't there because you've acknowledged it, and there's nothing that anybody can shame you with because you've already said, this is what it is and this is what I am.
Yes, that's right. And, it's, and even as far as additional things besides pain and emotions, I've always had kind of people who can just say that they're not good at something because during much of my life, and I've been working on this the past couple years of accepting certain things that there's a couple things I'm real good at, but a lot of things not. And people who can just say, well, I can't multitask, or I'm not good at being a leader, things like that, because it's self-acceptance. So in a way, they're very healthy that way.
And that everything has to be, in moderation and in balance, because you can accept yourself in a very negative way, which only continues to strengthen, your negative narratives and self-beliefs. You don't want to go that far. So there's some balance that I'm saying that, yes, I want to acknowledge those things I'm good at and not good at, but not to the point where I'm accepting the fact that I'm a piece of dreck, or that I'm not good enough, or those kinds of things.
Well, saying not good enough right away, that's non-acceptance.
Yeah, right.
It's going to cause problems in relations and a lot of other things. So might be better with that to just say, okay, instead of I am, like, well, I've had a habit throughout my life at yelling about the smallest thing. And by saying you have a habit, well, you can break a habit. That gives you the power to correct it.
Yeah. It's the perspective that you put things in. Yeah. One of the things that, is a constant repeating phrase in the teaching of meditation is, you're not your thoughts.
Yes, that's
you have
right.
thoughts. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. And that also, provides a little bit of say in the matter of what you think.
Yes, well, that's it. That's it. You're choosing your thoughts, even if some of them just pop up. It's like, well, that's a little bit like you can't always can't control what automatically pops up, but once it does, you can control how much airtime you're going to give that thought.
I love that way of saying how much airtime you're going to give the thought. That's really cool, because I have sat in newspaper offices when they do the budget meeting, and all the different departments come in and they say, my story's important. I want to be on the front page. And the editor sits there and say, well, we're going with that story on the front page, and that's going to be on page 32. And they do that budget meeting. And what you just said makes me think metaphorically that that's kind of what we can do in our heads. All these different thoughts come up, and we can decide what gets airtime, what gets on the front page, and what goes to page 32. I love the metaphor. I love it.
Yeah. So that's how you can. And as a side note to that, I've often wondered, why don't we teach in schools or in churches and different places how we can control our thoughts? But then I'd think, I'm glad they don't, because otherwise there might not be a counseling or coaching field.
Those fields are some of the few fields where we want to talk ourselves out of a business. Talk ourselves out of the profession. It would be so nice if that could happen. Yeah, I often think that if people were taught the skills of being able to observe your thoughts and metacognition, thinking about your thoughts and the like, if we strengthen that intuitive side of the brain, that part that comments and gives us some good advice, although we don't often listen to it, and taught some life skills early on in life, it could change the world in one generation.
Yes, it could. That's it. I think it's growing all the time with therapy, I think, mostly has been accepted in the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has.
Yes, where years ago, like, well, I remember if you compare the 80s and the 90s, the 1988 presidential election campaign, Michael Dukakis tried to hide that he'd been to therapy. But then 4 years later in 92, Bill Clinton freely admitted he'd been to therapy. And I thought so. And the fact that he won the 2 elections I think, was a sign that therapy's been more accepted in the mainstream.
Yeah, he also kind of admitted that he smoked some pot and he still got reelected. So
Yeah.
attitudes are changing. And another thing about therapy, maybe you could talk to this. I remember I was in therapy, and Frank, I had this sensation, and that there was some dark floor underneath which I could not remember, and that something terrible had happened to me on the other side of that dark floor, but I couldn't remember it. And I kept, saying, I wish I could break through. And I had that whole idea that if I could identify what it was. I was 320 pounds at the time. And I thought all along that it was that trauma that I couldn't identify that caused me to be, the compulsive overeater that I was and had gained that kind of weight. And eventually what really changed my attitude was the therapist said, well, Bob, maybe you will, and maybe you won't break through that floor. But you know what? Whether you do or whether you don't, you're still going to have to go on a diet.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of a practical aspect, and I think that often we give so much power to our imaginings of what our memories are or were or their power, that we just get we lose sight of the practicality, of just living life. And I guess, and you see that more clearly than most of us, I guess.
Yes, I see that where, there's, I mean, you may have been burying feelings by eating from that trauma, but was by overeating. But it's kind of like, we still have to live our lives practically. And I think a couple years ago, I acknowledged that sometimes I still had this thought and feeling that I have to prove things to people. And it hit me one day. Well, I'm 65 now. I was 63 then. And I thought, why do I sometimes still hold on to beliefs that are more becoming of a 23-year-old that has to prove themselves in the world versus a 63-year-old who's accomplished a lot and has most of don't have? And because that's the trick. I mean, young people are still trying to find their way in the world, and they pretty much have to pay attention to the practical. And if they don't, it's at their own peril.
Mm-hmm.
And, but as you get older, if you've done that, being focused on the outside world can come more naturally when you've practiced it. But, and I think we also have to pay attention to our inner world. I always like the mystic, Christian mystic, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who said, we have our spiritual life and our worldly life, and to ignore either one is at our own peril.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And I think one of the questions that, therapy asks us is it accurate? Is your perception, is your perspective that you have from these memories or these ideas or these narratives that you've developed in life, is it accurate? And you mentioned this narrative about, do I have to prove it? And asking yourself, is it accurate? A lot of us suffer from what they call imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I still think that I fooled the Bar Association into accepting me as a lawyer. And I somehow skated on the law school aptitude test. They never should have accepted me. And I still think that, faking it all around. But I ask myself, is that accurate? And, I have to say, and it's not accurate. I actually have accomplished a couple of things in my life. So,
Yes.
having the wealth of memory that you have, you have to be able to deal with all of those different things and put them into some kind of, I'm not going to say organized, but some kind of perspective that lets you assess whether or not they're accurate. And how did you develop that mechanism?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between, certain things in life you have to be accurate about. Especially like if you're a doctor or prescribing medicine, you have to be accurate to save the patient's life. And even in your law practice, we had to be accurate about the law. And when we want to set someone free who's guilty or the other way around. And so certain things you have to be accurate, but certain things are, you don't have to be that. Your own good opinion, you can make your own accuracy with it. Like instead of thinking, oh, I scooted by on the bar and should have been in, become mindful of the present moment. And this is one of the ways mindfulness helps. Think, okay, right now, we're a lawyer that accomplished things. I'm a therapist that has accomplished a lot, and I've done things with my memory, including be in university studies as well as write the books and all. So, getting into the present moment can benefit you that way too, as well as get you away from feelings from the past or worries about the future. It can get rid of those old beliefs that don't matter anymore.
Yeah, so true. But now you mentioned writing those books. Well, so I've written a couple of books, and they are labors of love, I will say. And I use the word labor quite emphatically. It's a bunch of work. When you've written some books now, and I want you to tell us about those books. But first, the question I have is it easier for you to write a book than most authors claim it to be? Because you have all of the facts and the memories and the stuff still, it's in your head. You don't have to go back and check the calendars.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's well, that is the easier part for me. And even in everyday life, like, when was the last time I saw this patient? I don't have to look back on the records, or even someone who came back after a couple years. Oh yeah, I remember. I saw you in 2022 from January through June. So it does make it easier. And of course, when it comes to this might be a little bit of a surprise, but when it comes to writing, I love the actual writing part. Particularly, I too see it as a labor of love, and I like putting ideas together and getting them down. But what the surprise is, I have no patience for formatting and all those detail stuff. So I always get help for that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have written some books now. Tell us about them. I've reviewed some of those books, and they're very, very helpful. So I want to make sure that you share what's out there and what tools are available for folks to follow up on some of these ideas.
Well, the first book I wrote was a memoir about what it was like having this memory. In 2007, I came out with Living with a Phenomenal Memory. Then when more things happened, and in 2018, I wrote a revised edition, included when I was studied at the University of California for my memory, and called Who Could Forget, title of it, and got a lot of editing because after 11 years, I knew a lot more about the writing craft. And then since then, I've written a self-help trilogy, Heal Your Memories. And what I did with each book...
Heal Your Memories. Heal Your
Yes.
Memories. Uh-huh. So that must have been, that must have been very insightful.
Oh, yes, it was. Like, I tell a little bit about me remembering everything and needing to get, but then with each of the three books, there's exercises for the reader, mostly of a meditative and cognitive nature. But for each book, I interviewed 12 to 15 people who had been through some trauma, but are now happy and thriving. School and workplace bullying, rape on the streets of Chicago, a career sidelining injury from a man who wanted to be a police officer, and a lot of people who are a lady who was raised in a war zone. So a lot of and so they're inspirational stories, which people really love. They eat that stuff up, and it's inspirational, and where people can think, well, some of the stuff I've had is nothing compared to what these people have been through. And so I've written books on emotional intelligence, and I've come out with 3 so far this year. Happy Every Day, which is all about how to be happy in your everyday life and not just the weekends, holidays, and vacations. And then I wrote a book of Stoic philosophy, all about controlling your emotions and not getting overly emotional about things. That's like we talked about earlier, being in control of your thoughts and feelings. And some people think Stoicism is about being a statue or a robot, but it's a lot more richer than that. It's there's a lot of satisfaction you can get in having a steady, consistent attitude day to day. And my latest, which is the one that hit number 1 on 3 Amazon bestseller lists last month when it came out, is Somatic Therapy for Beginners, how to find where emotions from the past are trapped in your body and release them through movement and different things. And along with all that, I did write one novel that came out in 2020. It's called The Unquiet Sea. It's about a man with a memory like mine who, at 50 years old, he seems to have everything. He's a psychologist who practices in his beachfront house, and he has a great fiance. But then, and it's historically accurate, one day in August of 2011, he finds out he's being sued by a young female ex-client for inappropriately touching when he knows he didn't do that. And because of that, his fiance gets cold feet, and there's a hurricane coming 4 days later, threatening to demolish his beachfront house. And so, and then, every novel has to have some tension in it.
Sure.
A problem that needs to be solved. And so it's how he gets through all that. And of course, with his memory like mine, he remembers, that hurricane's coming August 27th, the 40th anniversary of when Tropical Storm Dora ravaged the Carolina coast, and we had to vacate our house when I was 11 years old. So it's kind of a novelic testimony to having a memory like mine, and so really, I've had to, with all the writing I've done, it's like kind of the challenge of sticking to a universal theme, but at the same time creating variety. So for anything a reader needs help with, they can make their selection from my books.
Well, that's great. Well, Frank, it's been great. Thank you so much for your time. And like I say, I've taken a look at the summaries of the books, and they look like they're fascinating. This idea of somatic therapy, with the idea, and we've become accustomed to things like acupuncture and EFT tapping now, and the idea of energy blockages in the body. And your book goes straight to, being able to heal those traumas by movement, which, for some folks who find thinking and talk therapy difficult, somatic ideas are a way to kind of titrate and move into the idea of healing some old blockages without confronting maybe some of the thinking and memories. It's a more physical way of approaching it. And of course, that opens up space for people then to, continue on with looking at their, what we call in meditation, stinking thinking.
Oh, yeah.
So thanks so much for coming on, and we'll have all that information in the show notes. And I really recommend to you guys to go on to Amazon and take a look at Frank's books. And of course, his website's available if you want to get in touch with him for any reason. I'm sure he'll take your phone call. Thank you so much for being on, Frank. It was great learning about you. And I still can't wrap my head around what it's like to have that kind of a memory. I don't suppose you can imagine it, but God bless.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Take care.